Harvest time in Spain should be a time for celebration. But for olive growers this year, it's a time of anxiety. As they shake down the trees, the US is imposing a new 25% import tax on their olive oil, a tax that could decimate this fifth-generation family business, unable to compete with cheaper imports.
The vessels that are carrying Spanish olive oil to the States haven't even reached their destination, so what's going to happen? They were sold before these tariffs were a threat, so putting a 25% margin on top of this will kill our competitiveness.
Spain is the world's largest producer of olive oil. Exports to the US are worth $440 million. But those working in the fields have not had it easy lately. Last year's record harvest caused olive oil's purchase price to plummet by 44%, and more countries are planting their own olive groves, joining the market. Piling the tariffs on top of this could lead to collapse. Last week, thousands of olive workers took to the streets of Madrid, demanding the EU push back on the new tariffs and prop up the industry. They say they don't understand why an agreement that politicians had with Airbus should penalise their products.
We think it's very unfair because the agricultural sector acts like a monetary exchange for other industries that have nothing to do with the sector. In this case, it's the aeronautical industry, which has nothing to do with us.
While olive producers are already feeling the squeeze, around $845 million worth of Spain's agricultural exports will face US tariffs. The EU warns it will retaliate with its own import taxes if they win their parallel case against the US next year. It all has the makings of a tit-for-tat trade war. Charlie Angela, Al Jazeera.
Let's discuss this further now with Henry Kerr, who's economics editor at The Economist, and he joins us from London via Skype. Henry, it's nice to have you on the program. It hardly seems fair, does it, that olive oil exporters or exporters of whiskey or exporters of suits or whatever it might be that have nothing to do with Boeing or Airbus should be caught in the crossfire here?
Well, yes, I can understand why the people involved might see it that way. The strange thing about these tariffs is that they have gone through the WTO, insofar as the WTO green-lighted the Trump administration to impose them, having made a judgment on the case about the subsidies to Airbus. So I can see how the people involved might rightly think they're unrelated to that case, but they have gone through a system external to the US in a way some of the other tariffs that have been imposed by Washington haven't.
Well, after that WTO ruling, of course, there was a lot of discussion, even coming from the United States, that said, look, we'd rather find a negotiated settlement here, and that those subsidies should be withdrawn from Europe when it comes to Airbus. But why didn't a negotiated process succeed, and why has it been necessary to ramp this up now?
Well, it's a very long-running dispute, and of course it goes both ways. So it's all very well for the US to say that they'd be happy if the subsidies to Airbus were wound up. But of course, the European Union wants America to provide less support to Boeing. There's no doubt, really, that both sides are subsidizing these domestic industries. And it's entirely possible that the WTO will rule that the EU is allowed to impose tariffs on American goods too. The only thing that might hold that up is that America is holding up nominations to the WTO's appeals board. So because that's gumming up the WTO a bit, that might get in the way. But were it not for that, most people expect that the WTO would make an equivalent judgment in the opposite direction. So the idea that this is a sort of small dispute that could be negotiated away easily is wrong. It's very long running, and it has multiple parts.
And Henry, if that happens, if the WTO, and it did rule in favour of, as you said, it ruled in favour of the US tariffs, if the WTO said, OK, now Europe can impose their own, we're into a tit-for-tat trade war, aren't we? And what are the consequences of that more broadly?
Well, yes, we would be. Of course, the purpose of the WTO procedures is to try and constrain tit-for-tat trade wars, to try and make sure that all tariff responses are proportionate to the complaints that are brought. I think the bigger concern here is that we're operating at a time now where the Trump administration is perfectly willing to circumvent the WTO. So although in this case, it has been approved, there's still this outstanding matter of whether America might impose tariffs on European cars, for instance, in the name of national security. That's still basically an option available to the Trump administration. And the president has, on multiple occasions, attacked European trade policy. He's annoyed with the European Central Bank for its loose monetary policy, which he sees as keeping the euro too weak, and so on. So I think the question is whether this spills beyond the matter of aircraft making and into a broader trade dispute that's not constrained within the WTO procedures.
And all of this, of course, at a time of slowing growth and the ongoing trade war with China as well. Henry, thank you so much for giving us your time. Thank you.
Thank you.